Welcome to Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. It's like coffee with an analyst, but there's no actual coffee. Each episode, we interviewed an expert in the field of law enforcement analysis to share their career-defining stories and to get their insights on the world. Please join us on recognizing and learning from these brilliant minds as we define the law enforcement analysis profession one episode at a time.
Thank you for joining me. I hope many aspects of your life are progressing. My name is Jason Elder, and today our guest has 21 years of law enforcement analysis experience. She's an instructor and an active member in the IACA and the Colorado Crime Analysts Association. She's also somebody who has done bodybuilding competitions. Please welcome Danelle DiGiosio. Danelle, how are we doing?
Hi, Jason. I'm great. Thanks. How are you?
I am doing well. Oh, that DiGiosio. Did I get it right?
That was much, much closer. Yep.
DiGiosio. So I have to ask, which gets your first name or last name gets confused by people more?
Well, it's both, really, honestly. Most people don't even attempt to say the last name, and they just end up saying Danielle. So I've learned to just answer.
Yes. And so where does Danelle come from?
Well, that's probably a good question. I guess my parents really just kind of picked it on the fly as they were expecting a boy until I was born. Yeah, so my name was supposed to be Lee. I'm born, they look and they think, that's not what we were expecting. And so they picked Danelle. My dad's name is Danny, so I guess maybe that's as close as they could get.
Yeah, it's funny that they were expecting Lee. You would think they would have went with Leanne. So,
yeah, right. Yeah.
All right. So we got a lot to go over with today. I want to start out going back in time. You're graduating from the University of Denver in 1999, and you have a business administration degree. You've studied statistics and operations research. So how do you go from that major and getting into law enforcement analysis?
Sure. Well, I actually had the goal of being an FBI agent, special agent in the FBI. So I came to that decision in fifth grade is when I remember actively saying, this is what I want. So my path from there was pretty much, this is where I want to go, and I'm going to do whatever I can to get there. So in school, I had a professor. I took a statistics class, intro to statistics, and we got to talking and told her what I wanted to do in life. And she said, you need to major in statistics and give yourself a leg up on anybody else kind of coming out. You know, everybody at that time was like, you know, just your general business majors or, you know, some marketing, some of those bigger type of majors. And she said, this will help to narrow it down. You'll be one of 20 people graduating this year with this degree, this major. And so I said, okay.
I think that's fascinating because I've always wondered in this field if naturally I think people will think criminal justice as a major. I almost think if something like what you went through with statistics or an IT background or an accounting background might be more beneficial and go with more of a minor in criminal justice.
Well, yeah, I think so too. I mean, that's actually what I assumed I was going to be studying. But when I got to DU, actually before I got there, I realized they didn't have a criminal justice degree program. And so, okay, find something else to fit. But yeah, we tend to have those, at least the older ones of us kind of started with that criminal justice type background and moved from there. But having it a little bit more concise and honed in is something I think that I definitely was able to benefit from.
So then how did you get involved with the CMAT program?
Well, again, the same professor found out that there was this job opening on campus and they needed somebody to help with some statistics. So I said, cool. She said, of course, this will be one of those other things that just kind of put a feather in your cap and help you again to reach your FBI special agent goal. So ready for some acronyms here because law enforcement knows our acronyms. Mm-hmm. The National Law Enforcement and Corrections Technology Center, NLECTC for short. So this was a federally funded program had the mission to provide technical assistance and training to law enforcement and corrections nationwide. So I'm helping to, provide some statistic support with a survey and whatnot that had been going on. Now, also housed at the NLECTC was the CMAP program. So I met some people there and was just kind of around. Well, long story short, when I graduated, I got hired full-time to be as project manager for another completely different project. A few months later, the funding runs out and they are generous and they say, well, we'll keep you on. And I end up getting pulled into CMAP. So here, this is around 1999, I graduated. So around 2000 is when I kind of folded into CMAP. So Noah Fritz was the director at the time. And shortly after that, Sean Baer came in, Dan Helms, Jamie Price. I got to be assistant with that program and then helped with the training, setting up, getting the lab ready, getting the people ready. And then I ended up transitioning into the program coordinator position, where I still continue to do some of that, where I would reach out to our students or prospective students and help them to contact their IT department to get data downloaded and sent to us and get them all the logistics to get to the classes. And yeah, I did that for about 7 years. So it really, crime mapping found me. So I was very fortunate to just be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, so we didn't say what the acronym was, but the Crime Mapping and Analysis Program is CMAP. It's funny because it's already come on the show several times because we've had Sally Rawlings on and we've had Sean Baer on. So it wasn't intentional. Don't be talking so much this year about CMAP, but it's just kind of naturally transpired. So I guess for you then, learning ArcGIS, learning the mapping software, was that a challenge?
Oh, not really. I mean, there were, of course, some things that, because it's new, I didn't have any GIS classes while I was in college. So we just kind of picked it up and started learning. I would go in and be an assistant instructor, kind of helping during lab time. And so helping to troubleshoot and whatnot. So I had to learn it, and I had to learn it fairly quickly. Not only did I learn ArcView, because I believe we started with ArcView 3.1 or 3.2.
I remember that.
Yeah, I just always refer to it as 3.x. So we're constantly upgrading.
Yeah.
And I also had to learn map info. And for me, ArcView was easier to learn than our map info, just because they were such different programs.
Is there a favorite memory from your time at CMAP, or is there a great accomplishment that you have during your time there?
Oh, I don't know if I'd say a great accomplishment. It was definitely a lot of work. We had classes every month. When the trainings first started, they were actually 2 weeks long, excuse me. And we eventually had narrowed it down and got it to a lot less. So it was only 5 days, because 2 weeks away from your family is quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so ended up then expanding to having some other host sites that would have the classes there. So expanded out to California, and then we started having classes up at the Northeast Counter Drug Training Center in Fort Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania, which was in the middle of nowhere.
Yes, I've been there. I know exactly where that is. That's funny. I did not expect you to say that. Yes, I've been there.
Oh, well, goodness. Then you've got one leg up on me there, because I really honestly had no interest in going there. So I got to do a lot of traveling for CMAP. So I got to attend a lot of IACA conferences through that time and met a lot of people that way. Got to do the pre-conference training. Also got to do some other classes that I got to attend while I was there. We all know vendors, so I got to spend some time behind the booth talking up our program and chatting with people. So I really got to have a really good time with meeting a lot of people over the years. But I guess the biggest travel that I got to do was I got to go out to Hawaii to do a class in Oahu.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So Dan Helms and I ended up headed out there, and we get there on a Monday. Probably a Saturday. Get everything ready on a Sunday, and find out Monday morning of class that they actually have a holiday on that Friday. So we went from having a 5-day class to a 4-day class. We were like, oh, we have to get rid of a whole entire day. So we really crammed and we made it happen, but it was pretty fun. That's where I had my first poo-poo platter.
Nice. Well, the advantage to having it be the holiday that Friday, did that give you an extra day to do whatever, or did you fly back that Friday?
Oh, no. We actually ended up driving to Haleiwa and going to visit the beach there and see some turtles.
Nice.
So that was actually pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a wonderful assignment.
Yeah, I think people are like, really? You're really teaching? Yes. Yeah, we really, really did.
Yeah, teaching in paradise, right?
Oh, yeah, it was pretty awesome. It was August, so I think that was winter in Hawaii, but it was still amazing, 70, 80 degrees and not raining or snowing.
So then you eventually move on from the CMAP program and go on to be a crime analyst with Lakewood PD in Colorado.
Yes. I actually had really no intention at that point of leaving. I was quite comfortable, had a great assignment. I was comfortable, really. Mm-hmm. And I find out that there's this opening for a crime analyst position, and I hemmed and hawed about it, and I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. And then finally, I thought, you know what, I really actually like this, and I think I would want to be a crime analyst eventually. And you really can't pick when the opportunities come. You only get to pick whether or not you're going to snatch that opportunity up. So I did go ahead and apply and interview, and obviously got the job. So I got to work with Eric Nelson, who was, I'd known him, of course, introduced to him through the CMAP because he was also an instructor for a little bit. So I got to work with him. So that started my actual walk the walk, and instead of just talking the talk experience of being an analyst. But so Eric Nelson was only at Lakewood for a little while after I was hired, and ended up moving out and going into work for Bayer at the time. And so Stacy Belledin came in to take his position, and she brought with her her experience and ideas and really elevated our unit. And she helped to make it so that things were a lot more efficient in being able to go from our access database and helping us to, or me even really, to learn how to go from our RMS into an access database and into ArcMap and then back out to Crystal Reports. So really made it very easy for us to get at data fairly quickly.
And so was there a surprising growing pain to that transition? I mean, you're teaching how to do the job for so long and doing some of the work as well as people are sending you data at CMAP, but then now you're transitioning to actually being a crime analyst.
Yes. At this point, I don't know that I won't be able to recall all of them, but it is very, very different going from those small sets of data where you have this specified list of here's how to do this, and here's the assignment. You work through it, and this is what the end product should be. And then you know that there's always issues. We worked through those, during the classes and trainings and whatnot. But to actually have that be part of your actual job day in and day out, you're like, oh, wow, there's actually a lot more data. There's actually a lot more that you kind of have to learn. And, then those growing pains of, oh, now you have monthly chiefs reports that you have to do. And here's how we do them. And here's all of the pivot tables and all of this. And you're going to a roll call and you're going to speak to people and they're going to present in command staff meetings. So those are definitely things that you're like, oh, I knew that this happened. I just didn't realize that it was really going to be like this,
So I usually ask my guests about what we call their badge story. And this is their career-defining moment, career-defining case or project that they've worked on. And I think you're the first guest that we've had whose badge story was actually made into books, documentaries, and even movies or a limited series. So I did finish Unbelievable last night, the Netflix, I guess you would call that a limited series. I think it was 8 episodes on this rape series that you were a part of. Just to give a general overview of the case, certainly those that are interested in the case can go, watch the Netflix series or see some of the documentaries and stuff that's been talked about and wrote about this.
The rape case that I helped to work on, and then that, as you mentioned, was then made into a lot of different things. So if I could just kind of step in where I started here, I read an attempted assault case in our jurisdiction, and of course I go jump over and talk to the assigned detective. We have some dialogue and whatnot, and I check back here and there about further leads, information, but you can't stay there, only focus on one thing. And so as things get going, we put out more information. So what happens is our victim goes home, she's sleeping, she's awakened by some very strange noise that she hears, and the next thing she knows, there's a man who comes into her room and jumps on top of her and attempts to restrain her. And at this point, she starts calling out a name, and he gets spooked, and he decides he's going to abandon his efforts to restrain her, to just check to see if anybody else is in the house. And at this point, she jumps out of her window, and she actually is injured, breaks some ribs, punctures a lung, and she finds her way to the neighbor's house, who then they call us. That happened July of 2010, I believe. So after I talked to the detective, he, comes back to me about a month later and says, we have a sketch that the victim's friend had done for us and put out the information. Unfortunately, it's not very helpful because the suspect is dressed head to toe in black. All she could see was his eyes. We put the information out that, this has happened, but how do you bolo for a man wearing, black and white head to toe, almost dressed like a ninja? So I move on to some other cases, because it's not the only thing that I do. And about 6 months or so later, I get a call from the Westminster PD analyst, and she says, "Hey, can you send me over your report of this attempted assault?" And I say, "Sure." So I do. And she also sends back probably 4 or 5 recent sex assault reports that they had. And I kind of browsed, and honestly, I felt like most of them were not at all related. But one had a description of this, man dressed in black, and he had restrained the victim and then assaulted her. And then in February, I have a detective who was out at the Rocky Mountain Safe Streets Task Force come to me. He's also a Lakewood PD agent, but assigned there. He contacts me on a Monday and says, "Hey, can you search for burglaries where underwear was taken?" And I'm like, well, I'll look, but I'm not confident that I will find anything useful. I mean, what woman is going to report that she's missing underwear and assume that it's taken in a burglary and she's going to call the police? And especially when there's no sign of a forced entry, nothing's moved, nothing else is missing, but you notice your underwear is gone. Yeah.
That's so funny because they put that in the Netflix show, and the poor intern asked the question. Of course, they made fun of him for that. And I had a moment there because that would have been something exactly what I would have done, what that intern did early in my career. So I had a little cringy moment there that would have been made easily. That just as your reaction, it was like, who's going to report stolen underwear kind of thing. So.
Right. Yeah. Because I've actually had that happen where I would just assume that, the dryer monster who eats socks would have eaten it, or I would find it static clings stuck to one of my pant legs. I said, so I actually say this to the detective. And I'm like, but I'll do that. But here's what I will tell you is I think that there's probably a much more helpful data set. I did obviously pull all of the burglaries, apartment complex laundry room clothing thefts, and laundromat clothing thefts, because that happens all the time. If you've ever lived in a dorm or an apartment complex, you do your laundry in the basement and you go upstairs for an hour and come back and somebody's stolen your favorite pair of jeans or whatnot. Yes. Like, gosh dang it. So I thought, okay, I'll at least pull the data, but I really am not thinking I will find anything. So really the best option for finding something useful will be checking for calls for service, for suspicious people or suspicious vehicles in the area, especially where our attempted assault occurred. And I think I went back 6 months, a year at the most, with a half-mile radius of the victim's house. And this is where, ArcMap and exporting the calls for service and whatnot, and being able to pass through the databases and into ArcMap and then out into Crystal Reports, because it made it very easy and efficient to do keyword search.
Okay,
so this
great.
is on a Monday that the detective comes to me, and he's like, can you do it quickly? And so Tuesday is when I pull all this, and I'm pouring through reports and just keyword searches. And then on, I think Tuesday evening before I go home, the detective who's assigned our case says, we're going to go to a meeting tomorrow. Okay. I think I might have some stuff. I'm still looking now. So then on Wednesday, Detective Hassel and I go up to Westminster, just chit chat on the way up, and we walk into this conference room, and I think I ended up sitting basically in the seats next to the door when we first walk in, because we're probably the last people to show up. And I look around this room, and it is full of people. And I had, no idea that all of these people were going to be involved. And Aurora was there, Westy, of course, Lakewood, Golden, the FBI, CBI, there's the Safe Streets Task Force people. So I'm sitting here just listening to everybody sharing, going clockwise, and they share their progress at this point, following up on their leads, and they've exhausted this stuff. And they actually had a couple of really good potential leads to follow up on as far as suspects and people that are dead ends, and a box truck that was reported in some area, and they follow up on that. And it just like left and right. It's always like, we had this, but we've exhausted the lead, and it went no. So finally it, comes around, and I was like, I don't know if this is important, but I found this suspicious vehicle report. So if I can just take a step back and then, because people are like, well, how did you do that? And what really was it about? So I find this call, and I'm looking for code words. I'm looking for the call type of suspicious vehicle and the word suspicious. So I'm pouring through this, and I find this call for service that a resident she calls her neighbor and says, hey, there's this white truck that's parked in front of your house. This is just weird. And so that person, RP, the reporting party, for those who are not up on the LA lingo, calls us, and so we respond. And the agent drives up, checks, looks inside. There's nothing. Nothing suspicious. There's no safes. There's no weapons. There's no person. There's a dead body sitting there. So basically, there's nothing here other than just this truck's parked. So the agent logs the call, puts in the license plate number, and clears. So I, of course, I'm like, sweet, I have a plate. So I, of course, query the plate. I learn all about the registered owner, who he is, where he lives. And at that point, I'm like, what the heck are you doing up here? You don't live here. And from what I could tell, he didn't work there in the area. And the call's at like 10:30 p.m. He lives, down closer to where the police station is. And all right, well, I'll keep checking. I find his stats, of course, and check his history. He has no criminal history. He happened to pawn a ring, whatever. So of course I'm taking notes, and I run his plate through our LPR database and locate some hits, grab a picture, best of the best pictures, just because, and I'm out the door. And that next morning, we're at this meeting. So jump back to, hey, I found this suspicious vehicle. And I tell them, all of what I just explained. And I said, the guy is a white male, about 32, 6 feet, 220, blonde hair, hazel eyes. And then the Golden detective says, do you have a picture of this vehicle? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I flip my laptop around, and I show her the couple of pictures that I grabbed off of the LPR hits. And she says, that's the truck. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she happens to now reveal that she had this truck that had been driving in and out or around the apartment complex where her victim lived. Meeting ends. We all go back and, of course, do some more digging with LPR hits and grab even more pictures and put all of that, or most of those hits, in a document and send them off and share it. And, of course, everybody else is now in a flurry of checking this guy out. But I'm not involved in that piece. I do my part, hand it off, and go back to what my normal day would be. I work 4/10s. I'm off on Fridays, and I go up to the mountains. I get a phone call from Stacy. She says, Danelle, you're going to get a phone call. Answer it. I'm like, okay. I think this is on Sunday. So I've been up in the mountains all weekend. And so I finally get in touch with Detective Hassel, and he says, Danelle, we got him. I was like, wow, I hung up the phone, and the feeling that I had, and I still get, I get goosebumps, and I'm still just a combination of, it was relief, happy, proud, knowing that, this guy was off the streets and I had just a small part of it. Mm-hmm. In that happening. And it happened so fast. Like I said, my part was kind of done on a Thursday, and then come Sunday, I ended up learning after the fact that, Friday they did some surveillance, got some DNA. Saturday they matched the DNA, get a search warrant, and then on Sunday they actually executed it. So it was pretty awesome. So that's the short version.
No, I appreciate that. That's awesome. It's funny because there's certain things I was wondering, did this really happen with what the Netflix show said versus what you were going to say? And so it's interesting, even the flipping around of the laptop, that's exactly what happened in the show. So I was laughing as some of the details that you were talking about came true in the show. So one of the things that did also come out in the show is that the intern acted like he did this really sophisticated mapping technique to identify the truck. I had a cringe moment with that as well, because I had that happen to me early in my career too, where I learned this nice technique in training and got up to talking about it, and it was just totally lost my audience because I couldn't explain it in simple terms of what it was. So when the detective just says, just get to the point kind of thing of what you found, I had another cringe moment there. So did you actually do a mapping technique, or was that something that you were just grabbing within a certain distance from the rape?
No, actually it was very simple. So like I said, with the way that we were able to move data from our RMS into an Access database and then push it into ArcMap, I then just did a radius search, so where my victim's house was, I did I think a half a mile radius of all of the calls for service in that area. And so I just exported those calls into crystal reports and then pulled them that way. So it was for somebody who's not done the importing of your data and displaying XYs and then being able to do a radius search and select records and export them. It's a lot of steps, but it's not like this weird, crazy technique. And I call it simple, 20 years of radius searching and select records and exports. That's what it was.
So you mentioned your victim called out to somebody during the attack. Now in the show, it made it sound like there wasn't really somebody there. Was there actually somebody in the house, or did she just use that as a ploy to get away?
No, it was actually, I'm not sure how much of this information is public, so I probably want to be careful.
Sure.
It was not, she did have a roommate who lived with her, I believe at the time, but it wasn't his name that she was calling for. It was very much like if somebody else had been calling out to, like, Jesus help me kind of thing.
Interesting. So in the show, they referenced that rape forensic book that gave him some tips and pointers on how to clean up crime scenes. So did he have a pretty good library in terms of textbooks and everything on how to get away with rape for so long?
Well, he had a lot of different kinds of books, I think, from Freud to other just kind of some weird things, and I cannot recall all the titles, but he absolutely did that as something that was accurate. He did have that book, that rape forensics book, in his library.
Now, did he purposely pick different jurisdictions?
He did say that he did that in interviews after the fact. When he did go to prison, they talked to him because his assumption was that jurisdictions don't talk to each other, which is not a completely unfounded.
Yeah, we have our communications issues, that's for sure.
Yeah, but we definitely, I think, it shows a good job, and at first, when I walked into that room, I had no idea at that point that Aurora had a sex assault. I think it was at that point a year before our attempt, and I didn't know that Golden had one. So there was a little bit of a breakdown that way as far as that, but I don't know that I would have looked in Golden for that information. And then as we know now, especially with all the different types of software services and programs and data sharing capabilities that we have, I think now would be even easier to find any kind of those elements, very similar to what we did after the fact. But there was not just this little simple query for black mask, and especially depending on what your search parameters are, can bring back. But we did a good job, after the fact of talking and being able to put things together.
Okay.
But yes, he did. He did have that assumption that nobody talked.
Was there anything from the Netflix show that either was outrageous or made you give a great eye roll or anything like that?
Oh gosh, well, I don't want to disparage that show because it was actually very well done. The actors were great. The elements of the cases were there. And I think it really was not about me or the specifics of how things were done, but really the overall story focused on sex assault investigations and how they were done, maybe still are done, and what we did well, especially what detectives did as far as being tenacious about finding what they could and how they investigated it, and then moving forward in the future about how sex assault investigations should start, and I believe it's Eva International who actually came out with the line or I say line, but it's really kind of an idea of start by believing. And I think that was in 2017. So it's still very, very fresh, very new. So I don't want to say, oh my God, that was terrible. But, as my husband and I were watching it, I was like, especially that part about the underwear, I was like, oh my God, I said that. So I was like, I could pick little things. And I was like, yeah, that really happened. Or that was a little bit off or whatnot. But really, I think those little small details didn't necessarily matter.
So what about the one officer that they thought was involved? The one detective went and tried to get him to talk at the bar, and he ended up spitting in her face. Did that really happen, or was that something that was just made up?
I don't know, honestly.
Okay.
There was a lot that happens, in an investigation that I think I know in my experience am not privy to or don't, have all the details because, again, I'm not going back into every single report that's being made, especially after the fact, to see, did this happen? Did that happen? So I don't know.
Yeah, that was just something that was just left unfinished. So I was curious. I enjoyed watching this show, and it is 8 episodes, but I did it over 2 nights. It was actually pretty quick. So I highly recommend it to the audience to check that out because there's a lot of food for thought in that show.
For sure. I guess, yeah, to go back now that I think about it, like as far as, I don't want to pick on this show, but I was unhappy. I feel like they really did not do our detective justice in his portrayal. I feel like they made him out to be kind of a bad guy. A jerk of a guy, and he really is not. And it's not like he was kind of completely ignorant and not caring.
I gotcha.
And he was involved in, like I said, he called me. So he went to the search warrant and he, was able to see everything. And I remember him called me saying, I should have seen his face. It was as he walked out and he saw all these people in the CBI van and the FBI, and he was just like, oh crap.
All right.
But other than that, it was good. It had a lot of stuff in it and very good food for thought and really humanized the detectives too, because people, I think, forget, cops are people too.
Yes. All right. So let's take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about your transition to Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office, and I want to get into some of your volunteer work with the associations.
Sounds good.
You're listening to Analysts Talk with Jason Elder. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Stacy Belledin. As an aspiring crime analyst, I tried to find any training available to learn from classes, workshops, conferences, networking, you name it. If I could give one piece of advice, it is to invest in your future. I see many analysts sit out of training not to go to important conferences because their agency won't pay for it. And that happened to me too, but there's nothing that says you can't figure out how to get there on your own. Submit a presentation on your work, and you may find that some conferences will waive your registration. Buddy up in a hotel room to cut costs. Find local opportunities on online training where you don't have travel costs. Just like you budget for a vacation or a child's education, you should do the same for your continuing education. It's worth it.
Hi, this is Scott Eicher, and I am a retired FBI agent. And I just wanted to point out that FBI agents are people too.
Welcome back. Danelle, what I want to get into next is your transition from Lakewood PD to Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office. So just talk a little bit about that transition.
Sure. Stacy and I had worked well together. She was the Crime Analyst II. I was the one. And at that point, as far as we both knew, she had no plans of leaving. And so there was no opportunity for me to promote anywhere or get any kind of more than what I was getting as far as that. So I thought, I would like to see it about this. The analyst who had been at Arapahoe County was retiring. And so I thought this will be a really cool opportunity to get into a different agency, really start bringing all of the really great things that I had learned while I was at Lakewood and bring it to this agency and start revamping the unit there. It just happens to also be like a lot closer to my house, so I wouldn't have to spend 40 minutes in traffic going to work and an hour and a half coming home. So that was a
win-win, right?
Very much so.
So you're going from the police department to a sheriff's office. And I've talked to a couple of guests now about that transition and just the difference between working for a police department and then working for a sheriff's office. So from your point of view, what did you experience?
Well, it was definitely a lot more layers of people to work through. You didn't just have your commander and the chief and then the city council. It was buried way under there, a sergeant and a lieutenant and a captain and a chief and a sheriff. It was just miles long. And then the board of county commissioners. So anything that we needed to do was very, very slow going. I learned very quickly when I had asked to bring time attack raids to the department. They're like, well, you're gonna have to submit a request and you can wait 2 years. And I thought, oh my gosh, are you serious?
Wow.
Yes. They're like, we've had stuff on the project list for, going on 5 years now. So good luck. And
oh boy.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that was quite a surprise. Thankfully, they didn't take 2 years. I was able to really convince some people fairly quickly that was going to be something that would be helpful. And then just the jurisdiction. The jurisdiction was huge. Lakewood was 43 square miles, and Arapahoe County is 872. So a lot more to cover. And then also you've got the city, and then there's a lot of rural too. So it's almost like we have two different jurisdictions, truly.
Did they have Compstat when you got there?
Well, we call it Compstat. And in fact, when I did my oral board, I asked that. I said, I know that you would do Compstat here. And the captain at the time, he says, well, we do it, but we don't really do it.
That's what everybody says.
And it's true because, honestly, who really does Compstat the way that Compstat was, made? It's New York, and we're not New York, and definitely don't have it. And so it was definitely, we called it Compstat, but we truly didn't operate under the model of true Compstat. So it was pretty much here's some of the activity that's happened, and then go around the room and people would say, here's what's going on, and move on. There was no true, here's what's happening, here's the steps we took, here was the result of that. So it was a broken Compstat.
So it's more collaboration of just making sure you're sharing information and collaborating where needed. Right. Now, do you have to present, or do you have to supply data or reports for this meeting?
Yes, I am responsible for pulling all of the data to send out to our area commanders or our lieutenants and provide the documentation and whatnot. And then in the meetings, I would attend, and the lieutenants would get to have their share. And then I was also then called on to say, all right, Danelle, what do you got? I would be presenting the patterns and trends and some of the different information that they didn't necessarily have in just the numbers. So
oh, that's good.
Haven't done that lately, still working from home. So I still send all the data, but we're not attending those meetings.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the downsides to Compstat, and it's not even Compstat. I think a lot of these meetings that I've witnessed at police departments is you start out with this idea of having a meeting, whether it's like Compstat or not like Compstat, but eventually it seems like everything has to have a pattern, and then eventually it gets stale. And so it's refreshing to hear from your point of view that, hey, like I am presenting on stuff that's not necessarily in the normal report. It's something that's unique to this time period.
Right. And honestly, there are things that we're doing on a daily basis that don't make it into a report because it's happening now, especially with crime sprees. Like we had a huge spree of vehicle trespasses overnight here, and you could say, here's what happened and here's some suspect information, and it may or may not occur this next night, but we're not going to spend an entire 5 minutes talking about it 3 weeks later because it's come and gone in most cases.
Sure.
And so but that information still, you can't hold on to that until your report. It's got to be pushed out. So we're also doing weekly reports and putting that kind of information into a weekly activity report, as well as just sending out emails. I think a lot of analysts feel that anything they put out has to be this big production formal bulletin, even if it's just a little bit of information. When you have a suspect picture and you say, does anybody know who this is? And in my opinion, if it's something that I just want to, I think a guy ran into the store and stole a 12-pack of his favorite beer and ran out. I don't need to spend the 15 minutes trying to create a bulletin just to send it to patrol. I can just grab that snapshot, send it an email, and say, hey, this guy's likely lives in the area because he came and went on foot. Anybody know who he is?
Sure.
So that kind of information sharing is pretty vital too.
No, I agree. And it's just, and you never know when it's going to turn into something bigger, right?
Right.
I just had Rhea Gerstenkorn on, and she was running something on a PlayStation that a stolen PlayStation turned into a multi-million-dollar case. So it doesn't always have to be this big production, like you mentioned, that you never know when just a little bit of research is going to turn into something major. Absolutely. Yeah. And, anymore, it feels like everything is somehow connected to something else, even if it's just one person or, it seems it's just quite the cobweb anymore. Things just get lost in finding more and more and more because we have so much at our fingertips, different pawn databases and social media, Facebook Marketplace and Let Go. And just, there are endless amounts of sources for helping to run things down, to finding things. So you were on the RMS build team for the sheriff's office. And so I'm always curious from an analyst point of view, what you wanted from the RMS or what your experience was with being on that team, implementing a new RMS, records management system, for those that are unaware what RMS is. Yes. So I actually had the opportunity to be a part of the discussions for both our CAD, computer aided dispatch. That's something that I would highly encourage any analyst, if they are looking to transition to a new system, to be a part of. My part ended up being very small just because we kind of went from implementing CAD and so focusing solely on CAD, and then RMS kind of got on the back burner. And then by the time we were about to go live, it was kind of like, whoa, oh my gosh, we're live. So, but it was, a lot of things like how many different call types do we need? Are they redundant? Can we clear them up a little bit? Do we really need, and maybe yes, maybe not, suspicious vehicles, suspicious people, suspicious circumstances? Do we need all of them, or can we capture them differently? Do we really need to have a bike patrol call type? Do we need these things? So to help to make it a little bit more efficient, and how are things connecting? What do we need to make sure that we have? Because we as analysts, I describe it as, we are not only consumers of the data, but we are also people who pass that information forward. So we have to be able to see it from beginning to end and how we can use it best. Well, I would like it to be this way, but if we can't fix it, then I will find a way around it. I will find a way to make it work for me so I can make it work for you. And some of the changes were made and some weren't. So we still have some of those issues. Realizing how is it that we can have a crime start and end date where the end date occurred before the start date? And the system would allow that to happen.
that's not okay.
Yeah, I've talked about it, and I can't remember who came up with the idea. We wrote a white paper once on records management systems, and somebody suggested that it should be like TurboTax, where the information that you put in either tells you can't do that, or it leads you to a different questions or a different module, and it just guides you through the whole thing, and based on what your previous answers were.
Right. And then that's, as analysts, especially, I know I am, very much like I want it to be right. I want it to be as, accurate as possible. It's a fine line between too many required enforced fields and not enough. The deputies or police officers there, they've got a lot of information to put in. And if it's like every single one, this, then that, and, if then stuff, it bogs them down. And what I've seen in a lot of different departments, if they can find a way around it, they'll find a way around it.
Yeah.
Get me through.
So you have another bad story that you want to share during your time here at Arapahoe. And so this is regarding a robbery series, correct?
Yeah. So fairly new here at the county at the time, maybe. And I hadn't had any big things that I had predicted and been able to send out and have people pay attention to. But I ended up catching this couple of robberies, and this guy would go into a store and demand money from the register, had a black handgun and all covered up. And they were all different kinds of stores. One was a tailor, one was a liquor store. And I ended up contacting the detective who's assigned, or our investigator, and calling the sheriff's office. I said, hey, these are related, and I think there are some other ones out there in our very close jurisdictions. So I pulled as much surveillance video as I can get from the different agencies, and I put together a big presentation. So everybody comes to the SO and sits down in the conference room, and she pretty much introduces me and says, hey, go. So I run the show really with, here are the dates and times and locations, and here's the suspect. And he had gone from, just being covered up in regular street clothes to all of a sudden there's this like super muscular, and he's got this he had a wig and a fake beard, and I thought, this is clearly still a guy. He had been driving this Jeep Liberty, a maroon Jeep Liberty, and I could never get good enough surveillance to show a plate, but I knew it had one. I finally, do some oral analysis, and I put a bulletin together, and I say, hey, these are all the dates and times of occurrence, and based on his past activity, I believe he will hit in this time period, and he would hit the major thoroughfares, different streets. And so I said, from this street to this street, and the next thing I know, that next day, I believe, if he ended up hitting again in a different jurisdiction right next to us, they were driving down the street, call comes in, and they actually caught him. And our investigator goes in to talk to him, and she has my bulletins and all the pictures, and he basically just says, yep, that's me. And she, pulls everything out. How about this one? Yeah, that's me. And he was very forthcoming with, once he finally was like, at first he didn't admit to anything, but then when she pulls this out, she's like, come on, I know this is you. So he ends up pleading or admitting to it, and we house him. Unfortunately, it's a very tragic end. He ended up committing suicide in the jail a few days later, so he didn't even make it to trial. That's where I feel like, hey, I do know what I'm doing. I made a temporal prediction, and caught him, and here's all the thorough surveillance video and the reports and the information sharing once again proves to be an effective way of helping to apprehend our suspects.
Was there a pattern to where you predicted where he would strike next? You had mentioned in between certain streets that you were informing the officers to be on the lookout for.
So Arapahoe County is quite long, and so we're surrounded by, I think, we touch 5 different counties and jurisdictions. We were from Aurora, Denver, Lakewood, some smaller ones, Greenwood Village and whatnot. So basically, I had noticed that he did not cross our southern border into the county to the south of us, which is Douglas County. And his, ground was really kind of between our Broadway and another 1 or 2 outliers to the east, a couple miles to the east. So he had a fairly small area that I believe he was comfortable hitting. And it was always off of a major north-south street. And I feel like his northern border and his southern borders were fairly small also. So he basically said between these four streets, and it could be anything from a liquor store to a laundromat, any of the different businesses he'd hit. So I couldn't specify probably a liquor store on this day at this time. I had a fairly small area of operation.
Oh, that's a great feeling. Good job.
Thank you.
What I want to talk about in this last segment is your volunteer work with the associations. So you've been part of the International Outreach Committee with the IACA, and you are chair of the awards committee. With the awards committee, I'm not sure how many people truly understand how someone gets nominated, how that whole process works from beginning to end. So could you just go over that generally, how the awards system works with the IACA?
Sure. Well, there are actually a couple of different categories that we have. So it depends on exactly which award it is and what the process is to either enter or be nominated or win, if you will. So we've got the membership award. There's that one where people can be nominated for their contributions to the IACA specifically, or a unit, a bureau, an agency, or a community through crime or intelligence analysis. Or they can be somebody who has supported and promoted or facilitated the integration of crime analysis or a crime intelligence analysis into their daily operations. And so those are people who get nominated by others. And then we all get a chance as members to read the nomination and then vote on who we think should receive that award. The Brian Hill Award is fairly new, and that's somewhat similar to the membership award as far as a contribution. But those of us who got the opportunity to meet and know Brian Hill personally can actually really understand what we're trying to get with that nomination and honor his just contributions. He was always somebody who spent time in helping and trying to provide information or examples, any kind of knowledge or experience to help better another member of the association. So he's somebody that you could spend a lot of time with at a conference. You could find him in just the hallway having conversations with people. You could, let's say, after sessions that you would talk, or very similar to what we have now on the IACA forums. You post questions and then be responses. And Brian, who was always somebody who would chime in and really just put a lot of effort and thought into what he would contribute in answering.
Just to add to that, Brian Hill's no longer with us, as you mentioned. And on our website, we do have a podcast episode of him that Deb Osborne put together with her Analyst Corner podcast from years ago. So those that are interested in knowing more about Brian Hill, please go to our website and check out that podcast episode.
Absolutely. That's great, because, that will, I think, help to have, people who didn't get to know him or have that experience really have a little more of a concrete idea of what we're trying to bring forward and honor. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Next, we have the Gottlieb Award. The Stephen Gottlieb Award has, had a couple of different names, but basically that award is really about presenting to an individual who has developed or implemented or had success with a new method or idea or a tool for crime analysis. And, it could be something as simple as an idea about how to reduce a certain kind of crime problem, crime or disorder, to a mathematical formula, to a computer program, and that somebody has really had an impact just doing something like that. And he really just honors people for their innovations in crime analysis and has a positive benefit. So those are that we have people submit their examples of what their contribution is. What else? And the fun one, not that those aren't fun, but we have our bulletin contest, the analytical products contest. So that's where we have people submit different categories of crime analysis products, anything from charting to crime maps to statistical reports, intelligence products, tactical crime bulletins. And we have dabbled with online interactive products and dashboards. We have people submit their examples of work, and so we really get to kind of showcase what the good things that analysts are doing in the profession and show that through the products that they put out. And we have volunteer judges who also go through using rubrics and looking at all the different products and rank them. And we have first, second, and third prizes.
And then there's a section on the website, on the IACA website, that gives more information on all those awards and the process and everything else, correct?
Yes, there is a section for the awards committee. I think that we've got some of the products up for people to reference. Definitely have some of the winners up there. And then, the information about how to submit and what the requirements are and all of that, I think maybe just come when we do our announcements. So they may or may not be on the website at all times, but there's definitely the specific information, at least when we run the contest.
With COVID, there was some awards that you didn't do. Is there any awards, nominations, or going on now?
No, unfortunately, the process is done. We were really trying to still have some of those awards go through, but really it became much more of a challenge to try and figure out the logistics of how do we do this if we can't really give the whole award the way we wanted it to be dabbled in. Or considered, I should say, that instead of having, I forgot, our scholarships, the board has given funding to fully cover the cost of the conference for a U.S. member and a non-U.S. member. It covers the travel, the hotel, and the cost of the conference. And it's a submission process. You kind of have to tell us all about you and your agency, and that's my least favorite to pick because there are just so many people who submit with really great stories, and they demonstrate clear need for being able to go to a conference because, as we know, law enforcement is often strapped for funds, and unfortunately, non-sworn personnel seem to sometimes not get the training, approval, and funds handed to them just because it's not considered necessarily essential. That's my least favorite, even as far as picking somebody, because it's thinking, oh gosh, like there's only one person who can get this and there's 20 people. No, long story short, no, we did not do any of the awards and recognition for this year. I like recognizing people for their contributions and really bringing forward great stories to further our profession. People can say, an analyst can do this. This is what analysts are doing or should be doing. And I don't think anybody gets into the profession to get recognition. We're oftentimes very behind the scenes anyway, downloading data and crunching numbers and doing that stuff. So there's very little recognition day in and day out anyway. And so I don't think that we go into this profession thinking that I'm going to do this and everybody's going to think I'm awesome and they're going to be getting me awards left and right, and I get my own parking spot because I'm so cool, So, just one way for us to be able to say, you know what, we all know that we do an important work, and we want to just say, thank you, awesome job, here you go, because everybody should get some of that recognition. We all feel better about ourselves when somebody says, I see you, and I appreciate you, and I know that you're doing a great job, and for their awesome contributions.
What recommendations do you usually give new analysts or somebody trying to get into the field?
Well, I guess anybody trying to get into the field is you got to find a way in, and that's hard. So spending time volunteering in the local departments, however you can, and it may not be in a crime analysis type capacity. It may just be something you put in with records, because as we all know, it's not always what you know, it's who you know. And any little bit that you do can help. For new analysts, make friends with your IT department, people in IT, and reach out and really get to know the other analysts around you, because they will be very valuable assets to help you to come along. They have got, especially if they've got years in, they can help you with who to talk to, who to contact in this jurisdiction, who to ask for help, and can help to bring you along also.
The last segment here, I want to talk a little bit about your personal interests. So you have competed in bodybuilding competitions. So I'm just kind of curious how that came to be and how you got involved in it.
I don't remember exactly how it came up, but I do remember a friend of mine had said she competed, maybe showed some Facebook photos, and I thought, that's pretty cool. And then sitting around a table at work, doing a wet lab. And I don't know if many people know what that is. I certainly didn't have any experience with it firsthand until I got to Arapahoe County. But it's basically, I get to tell people I'm a professional drinker because I've actually been paid to drink, consume alcohol, and then go do roadside tests. So our training department actually, as the deputies are going through training, they have a DUI segment. And they do training, and so they of course learn all of the classroom stuff. But how do you know how to do a roadside test with all of the maneuvers without a live subject? It's a little hard to do that. So we actually have they let us volunteer, and it's all very regulated. But I get to drink and then go do roadside tests and try to pass them.
Nice.
But anyway, so I happened to be sitting at a table at ACSO with a few other people, and we just got to talking about, hey, I'm doing this bodybuilding thing, and there's different categories, and so we picked our category and said, all right, I'll do it if you do it. And I end up doing it. So what it is, and I didn't know a whole lot about this world until I started researching it really. So there's different categories, and when you think of bodybuilding, most people probably think of like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's Mr. Olympia, and that's a true bodybuilding contest. But there are different categories, and it's moved through the years. And there's a bikini category, and so every woman who enters, whether you're doing the physique, which is the real big muscle, to fitness, which has the kind of acrobatic routine to it, as well as a physical piece. And then there's bikini. I call it modeling with muscles because it is meant to be like, you want to have muscles and balance and whatnot, but they don't want you to be too big. They don't want to see every little striation of your muscle. They don't want that for this category. But it's still very, it's still pretty. They want you to look like women. There's hair and nails and high heels. There's 6-inch high heels that you are required. There's a lot of requirements and specified things that you can wear. So 6-inch heels, and your bikini has to fit a certain way. And it's pretty intense. There's tans, spray tans. So you get up on the stage and you look like you're a normal tan, but you go out into the world and you look like you put on way too much stuff, and people are like, are you supposed to be that color? But it's actually,
You're like orange.
My daughter was like, Mom, I don't like this. You are way too orange. I was like, I know, but it's pretty intense. I trained myself for the first 2 shows that I did, and just did some research on the nutrition, and I have always lifted weights, so I really just was much more stringent with what I ate and how I worked out. And then my last competition, I actually hired a coach, and I did it all online with him, and it helped me that I as organized as I am. I kept everything in an Excel spreadsheet.
Nice.
Yeah, I would send it to him. He was like, this is pretty crazy. I've never had a client do this before. And I was like, hello, meet me.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of work. I ended up training for 16 weeks. Very stringent diet. It changed a little here and there, but for the most part, my meals were egg whites and plain oatmeal for breakfast, and chicken and asparagus or chicken and spinach, and no dairy, no fat, no sugar, no alcohol.
That's a lot of effort, a lot of work, because those are a lot of goodies that you can't consume.
That's right.
It sounds like it was more for you, the diet, than the actual preparation in terms of weightlifting.
Well, actually, it was very simple to me. You know, the workout was actually pretty stringent because I would do 2 a days. So I'd get up at 3 a.m. and go do an hour of cardio in the morning, and then do my day of work and whatnot. And then, you know, depending on what I had going on after work, my kids' sports or whatnot, and then I'd go work out for another, sometimes 2 hours with weights. So it was very time consuming that way. And it was actually, I didn't mind the diet as much because it was quite simple. You know,
Okay.
I say, hey, what's for dinner? And I say, well, I'm eating chicken and spinach. I don't know what you're having. So it's definitely, it was kind of both. You know, I think it's really just, you just commit and you do it. It was, you know, people were pretty impressed with it. I could go to a restaurant and they would be eating these juicy cheeseburgers, and I have a plain turkey burger, no bun, and some plain mashed potatoes, because the sweet potatoes I had to have. You know, so you just kind of do it. You know? At least that's how I thought about it. Because anybody can do anything for a specified amount of time if you're just committed to it.
Yeah. Interesting. How did you finish at these competitions?
Oh, I think that's my first competition. I placed second in one category and fifth in another. And I think I came home with another 5th place trophy, and then my last competition, 3rd place. So I kept saying, I got to do it again because I have to get that number 1. I may have even had a 4th place trophy at some point. So, like, I got to get first. I can't not do it. I'm just competitive enough that I got to do it.
Yeah. Do you have another one planned?
I don't have one picked out and planned yet. It's definitely something that I'm interested in doing again. I just have to look out and say, okay.
So the last segment to the show is Words to the World. And this is where I give the guest the last word. And you can promote any idea that you want to, Danelle. But what are your words to the world?
My words to the world, I guess, are just, I think some people have echoed it, be nice. We just have to be nice, especially, right now. Be respectful. We are all going through our own stuff. And if we are all just focused on making everybody feel valued and know that everybody has worth and value and can contribute to our world, then we can't help but all be better.
Excellent. Well, I leave every guest with, you've given me just enough to talk bad about you later, but I do appreciate you coming on the show, Danelle. Thank you so much, and you be safe.
Oh, thank you, Jason. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us today on Analyst Talk with Jason Alder. We hope you not only enjoyed the show, but also learned something new. For more information on our guests and information relating to today's topic, please visit our website at leapodcast.com. Special thanks to The Rough and Tumble for our theme song. For more of their music, you can visit their website at theroughandtumble.com. Also thanks to Kyle McMullen for our show logo. For more of his design, please visit his website at moderntype.com. The show is hosted, recorded, and edited by Jason Alder and written by me, Mindy. You can contact us both via the LEA Podcast website. Please join us again next time as we interview another expert in this great field.